You want to make sure, okay, was there something in me that helped to cause whatever issue is going on? And that maybe will help the entire situation.
You're listening to the Dare to Be Different podcast, a podcast for people who want to live an extraordinary life. On this week's episode, Joe and Ed talk about taking steps to forgive others. Enjoy.
So, welcome to the Dare to Be Different podcast. My name's Joe, and I am here with the lucky Ed Newell. How are you today?
One day my luck will run out, but today is not that day.
Today is not that day.
I am here with you.
Is that it? I thought it was the. I thought it was the fact that you made out big on the Super Bowl this year.
The Super Bowl was very kind to me.
It was very kind.
It was very
to you.
kind to me.
Yes, exciting game for sure.
Yeah, it was. Do we know what date this is airing?
I don't know.
Super Bowl will be a few weeks ago,
but we're recording it the day after the Super Bowl.
The day after Super Bowl,
yes.
And it was. I'm not a fan of either team. I was a fan of some of the outcomes of the game, and they were very kind.
They were very kind to you.
Yes.
So the Dare to Be Different podcast has nothing to do with betting on the Super Bowl, but I guess we could probably put it into the adventurous. But what we do, man, I feel like we should start over. Keep rolling. We're good. So the Dare to Be Different podcast is all about living an extraordinary life. And we use 5 words, 5 values to define ways that we can have an extraordinary life. And that is adventurous, honest, passionate, healthy, and grateful. And for the Super Bowl, you went a little adventurous, put a couple bucks down.
I did.
And
then it was an extraordinary night.
And it was an extraordinary night.
I had a nice time. It was fun.
Good.
Yeah.
So other than the Super Bowl halftime show that I thought was, a little risque, but entertaining.
Entertaining. I've seen a lot of people on both sides of the aisle on that argument. Some people saying it was way over the top, totally inappropriate, everything else. And then I've seen shirtless photos of the Maroon 5 guy from last year. And people saying, do we have a little bit of a double standard where the meme was all the moms had hard eyes last year,
right? And
now this year all the moms are really upset. I don't know. It's probably somewhere in the middle.
I will tell you, my wife, who's pretty conservative, she's not, her comment was, I hope I look that good at 50. Like that was it. Like I'm pretty sure if my wife felt that she looked that good, she would have no problem doing everything that they did at the halftime show.
I'm just a little nervous about all the guys that were dancing with J-Lo. I have a feeling A-Rod is going to fight them at some point because they were up in her business a few times. So, but yeah, it was an entertaining few hours.
Yeah. The best comment of the night, John Acuff, who, if you don't know who John Acuff is, he's a speaker, and he said the move from dancing on the pole to singing with little kids was the fastest play of the entire Super Bowl.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that was cute though. That was her daughter,
right?
So that was like an endearing thing. So she had to make up for the pole dancing.
All right, so let's move on.
Yes.
So today we are going to talk about forgiveness because I feel that sometimes having an extraordinary life, we get hung up on stuff that happens to us,
right?
And especially stuff that happens to us that other people have imposed on us, have done to us, and we are limited in our life and limited in the ways that we can live exceptionally,
right?
Because we can't let those things go.
Right. Yeah, I think every single one of us are going to have times where you're going to get hurt in life by somebody else or get offended by somebody else or someone's just going to let you down. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is primarily, we have a lot of business leaders that listen to this podcast. And I think you easily can even live in a place where your employees let you down. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of forgiveness, I think, transcends every sphere of your life. It's going to impact your personal relationships. It's definitely going to impact you in your business setting. But if you can't, honestly, I'm going to call it a skill. If you can't practice and outwork this skill on a high level, I think in these different areas of life, you will be capped in the progress and growth you can have.
You know what's interesting about unforgiveness? I feel like it's one of those things that it almost sneaks up on you. Because I feel this in my life. I'm actually a pretty forgiving person. Like, I don't hold on to a lot of stuff.
Also humble.
And humble, yes. But I forgive you, Ed, for teasing me about my lack of humility. But
Yes.
it's for unforgiveness is one of those things that, you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there, and then it seems to like slap you in the face. And especially with marriages, stuff like that, where you're like, you think that something is out of your system, and then you're in some argument, completely unrelated argument 3 years later, and then it just comes up,
Right.
Or it comes up from your spouse and hits you, and I don't know, that's. Again, that just is so unhealthy.
Yeah. What's that? I've heard this quote a million times, and I've heard it with unforgiveness or bitterness or whatever. But holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting it to harm the other person.
Right.
Have you ever heard
Yes.
that? So it's like whenever you're holding on to unforgiveness, it almost feels like. You feel right for doing it. Like I'm in the right for holding on to this unforgiveness. I'm not going to let them off the hook for that thing that they did. And you feel like you're like winning in the situation or something.
Right.
But the quote says it's like drinking poison, expecting it to harm the other person. Ultimately, it's harming you.
Right.
And by you holding on to it, by you sitting on it, it might not come up right away, but I love what you said. If it's sitting somewhere inside of you, you might not even know it's there or realize it's still there. It's going to come up, and it's going to have an impact either in the short term or the long term of that relationship.
Yeah, and this is one for me that has been a bit of a challenge, because I grew up in an Italian family, and literally The Godfather was one of those things that we watched, and if you ever watch those type of movies, they're all about keep your friends close and your enemies closer,
right.
And 30 years later you make a wrong right by doing something drastic. And so I think a lot of people in their lives have that type of mentality where it's just like, I don't necessarily want to let go of this thing.
Yeah.
I want to get revenge. I
Right.
want to make them somehow suffer. And what's the irony of it is that through that person is living their life.
Right.
They're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And you're consumed with it.
Right. There is something about it's like, and both of us definitely have a competition streak in us, but there's something about it to me that's almost like the other person wins. Like if they wrong me or they do something wrong or offend me, and then I forgive them and I, so to speak, let them off the hook, it feels like they've won.
Right.
And in that situation, if I really believe they did the wrong thing, I don't want them to win. Mm-hmm. And so I want to hold on to that. I want to get revenge. I want to wait until the appropriate moment where they fail and I can almost even celebrate it, whether privately or publicly. You got what you deserved. You got what you had coming to you. And I don't really, I mean, that's a lot deeper than just the ability to forgive or not. I mean, that gets into some serious pride issues that I think a lot of us tend to carry about wanting to personally be successful and always looking at life as if it's a competition with other people when
Right.
it's really not.
Yeah, and one thing, as a disclaimer that I do want to put out is there are things that happen in your life that are almost impossible to overcome.
Right.
Big things without some sort of professional help.
Yes.
And so, anything that we talk about today is for, we'll call them commonplace offenses, things that aren't, aren't something that is catastrophic, something that happened to you that is just a big thing, and I'm thinking, abuses,
Yep.
stuff like that, like those types of things. Go get help.
Right.
Don't
Absolutely.
listen to a podcast. Podcasts are great, but you're not going to solve this with just a podcast. Go talk to somebody. That's really, really important.
Yeah, that can be maybe the primary thing that you need to get out of this is that you need professional help to maybe overcome some of the things that have happened to you. But while we're going to talk about what forgiveness is, I think there's a whole lot of stuff about what forgiveness is not too.
Sure.
And there's a whole lot of truth that forgiveness isn't, and I don't know some of the things you had on your agenda to talk about here, but forgiveness isn't necessarily reconciliation. You know, I have a lot of people in my life where I have to come to a state of forgiveness around, but it doesn't mean I have to be best friends with them. It doesn't mean I need to even be in a relationship with them anymore. But the forgiveness aspect, I think, is something that is going to be healing to your own soul. And it's not really about them. It's about you. It's about freeing yourself.
Yeah. And the act of forgiveness is not giving them permission to do whatever they did again, or letting them off the hook for, for continued bad acts.
Right.
You know, there might be some limits that you have to set up in your life so that things don't continue happening.
That's right.
So yeah, forgiveness is not accepting a situation.
Right.
It's internal.
Yeah.
It's the way that you emotionally deal with it, how you, mentally, spiritually, all those things deal with this thing that happened to you.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So the first thing is I have to look up a lot of this stuff. So I study a little bit before we have these podcasts, just so I know what I'm talking about, which is always great for a podcast host, right?
You prepare. I
do prepare, yes. So everything that I've read says that, when something happens to you, the first thing you have to do is you need to move on to the next act. So you have to, your past history and all your hurts are no longer here in your physical reality. So don't let them be there in your mind. So if something happens, right, you have to acknowledge the fact that it's no longer happening. It happened, but it's no longer happening. And some people that's a tough thing, is just to move on to that point.
Yeah. I mean, that to me speaks so much to, again, talking about significant offenses. I think that's a common thing. Again, we're talking about commonplace hurts here, but when you talk about things like abuse, that's one of the most difficult things that is traditionally said of people who have been abused, is the feelings of it continually come up, or they find themselves in situations that it comes up. But just go commonplace. Maybe someone in your workplace has offended you, and now every single time you go into work, every single time you see them, those feelings well back up. What you're saying here, though, is that really is happening in your mind. Hopefully they're not continually offending you. If it's a one-time thing, it's not continually happening. It did happen in the past, and because it happened in the past, you can maybe compartmentalize it a little bit better in your mind to address it and deal with it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And the person who created the offense is no longer meaning to offend you, even though you continue to be offended.
Right.
Or hurt you, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So again, that's an internal thing. That's something in your mind you have to work out.
Yeah.
So this is a big one. Step 2, don't go to bed angry. And I've heard this with marriages. Don't go to bed angry at each other. My wife and I practice that. We've had some really late nights because of this rule.
Yeah.
But this is bigger than that. This is don't lay your head down, shutting your eyes, dwelling on that thing that happened to you that day, that week, that month, whenever that happened, because that's how you go to bed. Is a lot of times how you wake up, and you dwell on it, and your subconscious chews on it through the night.
Mm-hmm. I in theory, I fully agree with that. And I've talked to many people about that concept. I'm not so sure my wife and I do that well. My wife is definitely a processor, and where I want to talk about things pretty quickly, I want to kind of just address them and get them through. If we get into some sort of argument and it is late, it is tough for us to make the decision to stay up late. And no, I'm not, maybe you guys care about your marriage more than we do, but sometimes we do go to bed, and we'll maybe still give each other a kiss before we fall asleep, but she will regularly need time to process things, think through things before she can handle them. So if we're in a situation, it is late, I've broken my own suggestions. And again, I've heard this all over the place, but you're not wrong that your subconscious chews on it, and you're not wrong that you wake up feeling the same way. But it has helped us in certain situations where we wake up maybe a little bit more well rested, because if you're tired, man, I mean, tired, hungry, whatever, solve some of those issues before you tackle the world's problems. But in a more well-rested state, we've been able to have more healthy dialogue to work through some things. In a relationship that's not maybe a significant other, it's in a little bit of a different place, because that person isn't with you in bed. You're not arguing with that person. You're thinking about that offense from work or that person you ran into. So we're not talking about that person even apologizing. We're not talking about that person making the situation right. We're not talking about you forgetting the situation. We're not talking about you reconciling or being best friends with that person. But you can internally make a decision to forgive, make a choice to forgive. It is a choice. It is a skill you can practice. And in turn, I believe it can empower you to have more restful sleep.
Right. If
you can solve that maybe in your mind before you go to bed.
So my wife and I, to your point, we are the opposite. We, and I feel that the more tired we get, or at least the more tired I get, the more pliable I become when we're arguing.
So she wants to bring up stuff late at night.
Yeah, she's like, I'm gonna wait him out. This is it. Like,
just a waiting game at this point.
By 9:30, he's gonna be really like.
That's right where I want him.
Yep. But there has been times in the past where I think we're done. Like, in my mind, we've kind of worked through the issues and all that stuff, and I'm like, it's time for bed. It's whatever, 1:30 in the morning, 2:00. We've in my mind, we've completely exhausted the topic.
Yeah.
And then I'll start nodding off, and I'll get like a little like kick in the shin, like, oh, I'm still mad at you.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Here we go. But to me, I really, really like that, because it doesn't drag on into the next day. And like I said, and that is
good.
It's not an everyday thing. This isn't even, man, I can't even think of the last time something like this has happened. So it's not even an every year thing.
Right.
But this is a big disagreement that we just can't work out. And it's like, wow, we're gonna power through this.
Yeah, we've done that. And for those very large things, you just have to.
Yeah. You're like, you
can't let it go by.
Right. But to your point, this is also myself trying to think of something else and trying to work through this on not an offense with Alicia. This is about anyone else. Like, I need to forgive this person. I'm angry with them for some reason, and I simply don't want to. I don't want to dream about them tonight. I want to have a dream about flying through the air and you know what I'm saying, like
fun dreams.
Yeah, I want to have something fun. I don't want to be thinking about and then also to the same point though, I don't want to wake up upset. So there are times I have to try to work this out, or I have to try to distract myself, or whatever the case may be, so that isn't the last thought in my mind before my eyes close.
Yeah, I do kind of treat maybe a disagreement or an offense between you and a significant other more on a different scale than almost everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because even the idea that forgiveness is not reconciliation, I would actually change that when it is with your spouse.
With your spouse, it's completely different.
You need to reconcile. And, we would both hold a very high view of marriage and the importance of it. So reconcile, you know. But with somebody else, it's not necessarily that. It is you making an internal decision that person and what they did and that offense is not going to rule over me tonight as I go to bed.
Yeah, and this one is for free. I'm just going to give a piece of marriage advice. Apologize fast. That is the piece of advice that I have given to my adult children who are now married. Anytime that a conflict that comes up and you have any culpability in it, any part of it that is your fault, you apologize quickly. There is no sense of having pride in a marriage and make that ruin it. It's just not worth it.
That's good.
And actually that kind of leads us to step 4, switch the focus from blaming others to understanding yourself. Sometimes the offense that you have actually has nothing to do with the other person. It's because of your past experiences. It's things that you've gone through and you've completely misinterpreted the events. And you need to understand that about yourself so that you can forgive. Again, maybe they did something wrong,
Right.
but not to the extent that you're holding on to it. And you
Right.
need to do this self-reflection to help yourself through that.
Yeah. Even just to make sure that you don't do something in return that you'll later regret, or feel some way about a person or a situation that honestly you shouldn't be feeling. If it really is something going on inside of you, I mean, that's something you definitely got to solve. And if you discover that, then it's going to be easy to forgive them, because you realize, okay, the problem was with me the whole time.
Right.
I mean, if you're going into work every day, eating your hard-boiled eggs at your desk, and everyone's yelling at you, you're the problem.
Yeah, you are the problem.
The other people are not the problem. Okay, so that's the stupidest example I can think of.
But
there could be something like that.
Yeah, where yes, maybe they didn't handle the situation right, and we're actually we might as well put these together. The next step is take responsibility for your part.
Okay.
So those two things, kind of go together. Like, do some self-reflection. Am I being offended because of the place I worked before was so tough, or whatever the
Right.
case may be? And then go, okay, I need to take that responsibility. Like, I have to understand what my part is.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I would say there more than 50% of times when you get into a spat with someone, you're going to have some at fault. Pretty rarely, and I'm not trying to dismiss any time that someone just very unfortunately gets taken advantage of, or
Right.
somebody hurts somebody, or offends someone at work or whatever. But the majority of the time, there's fault to be shared across both parties. And listen, I mean, you're going to have increased difficulties with the people you're in closest proximity and closest relationships with. The person I spend no time with, I don't got any problem with them. They don't got any problem with me, because we don't ever see each other, right? But
Hey, Bill, how are you? Not bad. All right.
great.
See ya.
But the people you're spending time with, and they might just be a coworker, but in the larger sphere of your life, it's going to be relationships that are family, are friends, are really significant, meaningful relationships. Hopefully, your coworkers are meaningful relationships as well. But those types of relationships, you want to make sure, okay, was there something in me that helped to cause whatever issue is going on? I want to do self-reflection, identify it, own it, apologize for it, help myself move past it, and that maybe will help the entire situation. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you got to totally reconcile or forget the situation happened, but it's going to help your own soul, your own spirit, so that you can continue to move forward in life unencumbered by that unforgiveness, that bitterness.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen this, especially with families and parents and kids and things like that, where there's some sort of divide happens, and the parent tries to, or the kid, whatever the case may be, tries to put that olive branch out and tries to put, I'm going to take responsibility for my part. And then when it's not reciprocated, the fence even grows.
Yeah, you go back to being even more angry.
Yeah, and that's a trap. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is,
That's right.
I forgive you for your part, and I'm acknowledging my part,
Yes.
and now I'm good. Like
Yeah.
my spirit is good.
Yeah.
My mental health is good. That's forgiveness. Not I'll be okay as long as I'm going to say, hey, half of this was my fault. Is it your fault too? Like, come on, tell me all the
Right.
things you did bad.
Right. Yeah, it can't be conditional.
Right.
Forgiveness can't be conditional. It has to be an unconditional choice that you are making, that regardless of how that person responds, regardless of if they ever apologize, regardless if they ever fix the situation, in my soul, I'm going to choose to forgive and let that go and be okay with that situation, so that I can be healthy. you
Right.
know? If you go, man, that is some good marriage advice there too. If you go into a fight and you try to be apologetic or have forgiveness, but it is conditionally based, oh man, you are in for a world of hurt. my
Yeah, and
friend.
most of the time it's manipulation.
It is.
And
That's really good.
And nobody responds well to manipulation. As soon as they realize that it's manipulation, it's over.
Yes.
Forget about it. So, so don't, again, all of this, it's not conditional. This is all about you. This is all about your health. not about what the other person thinks of you or any of those things. So
Right.
we're going to keep saying that through this whole thing.
Yeah.
So the next one is great, and I've learned this from my wife. She is a master at this. It's be kind instead of being right. And she, when my son was in his teenage years, and I knew I was right every single argument with him. There's no doubt in my mind I was right in everything that I said, because you're the parent. You're so much older. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All those types of things.
Yeah.
And she would say, "Is being right worth damaging the relationship, or is it better to be kind? Is it better to be forgiving? Is it better to be all of those types of things?" And there's so much truth and wisdom in that, in every relationship, not just in a parent-child relationship.
Yeah. I had a mentor one time just talk to me about the importance of not burning bridges. And I think you can have the capacity that when you're offended or hurt, maybe you even want to burn that bridge. You could care less about that person if you ever had a relationship with them again. But I think there is so much wisdom of choosing kindness, choosing to make sure that as much as it depends on you, you're going to live well towards other people, live at peace with other people, and how you treat them, how you act towards them, how you speak about them when they're not around. And I think so much of that just goes into your own, it actually helps your own soul. When you just make a decision, I'm going to choose kindness, I'm going to speak kindness, it does something to your mind. Even if that moment you haven't fully chosen forgiveness, when you make a decision to speak kindly about someone, I think whenever you just verbally out loud speak that something, when your own ears hear it, it can actually have that positive effect on your mind and the way you're thinking, and help yourself to process those emotions, and maybe even bring you to a state of forgiveness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And again, it seems like it's one of those things that you're like, oh, that makes so much sense, but it's so hard to practice that.
Yeah.
And especially in the moment.
We're talking about it like it's way easy.
Like, oh, yeah, just do this. Just, just be nice.
Yeah. But I'm thinking back to stupid arguments I've had over the last month, and it's like, man, I could have followed some of these principles a lot better.
So this is a good one. The next one is practice giving. And, it's just, when you're giving, when you're generous, when you are looking outside of yourself, and that's giving. It's not just physical things, but it's serving others. It's giving patience. It's giving But when you start living outside of yourself, suddenly those offenses that you've internalized, you can put them in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think an offense is about what someone has done to you, and we often want this idea of forgiveness to be conditional, that my forgiveness towards them will be attached to them making it right and what they're going to do for me. You're talking the exact opposite. You're saying, let's not live with a mentality that says, what can I get from them that is going to make this situation right? Or whoever can make this situation right by giving me something. It's saying, no, I'm going to actually just change my whole mentality towards the situation. It's not really going to matter what they do for me, how they make it up to me, if they're even going to do anything at all. But I'm going to live my life with an attitude that says, okay, regardless of how I've been hurt, regardless of how I've been offended, I still want to live my life being good towards others and making sure that I'm living my life in a generous mindset. And I think generous with your words is so important. And choosing not to talk negatively about people, whether they're definitely when they're in the room, but specifically when they're not in the room and you're not around you. And that goes back to what I was just saying. I think if you can choose to be generous in what you think about people and what you say about them, it can have such a positive, healthy impact on the way you live.
Yeah, the other side of it too, and we both, you work for a nonprofit organization. I serve, with different nonprofits. We both have this view that the self, ourselves, are much smaller than the thing that we're trying to accomplish in the world.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times, again, big disclaimer, I'm not talking about huge things that have happened to us in the past, right? Big things.
Sure.
But everyday offenses, when you have a smaller view of yourself, when you have a world view versus a self view, sometimes those offenses just they're not as they're not as big. Like, okay, so this person said something stupid to me. Whatever. I'm going to go help the homeless that have nowhere to sleep tonight. You know, it's like you just when
That
self
was such
is
a massive 180 there. That was pole dancing to Dancing with Children right there. What you just did.
But you know what I'm saying though. But that's exactly it.
No, I get it.
When I'm so self-absorbed, when what happens in my life is the only thing I see 100% all the time.
It's really good.
Then I have no choice but to be offended when that view somehow, when somebody does something to that thing that I think is so important.
Right.
But when you're like, okay, so myself is 50% of what is important to me, and there's another 50%, and that other 50% is so big, you're like, man, do I have time for this? Is that really something that I need to concentrate on?
Yeah.
You know, oh, so somebody dinged my car door or got the parking spot that I wanted to pull into. Is that really going to ruin my day? Am I going to be, you know, offended by that? Am I going to be, you know, not forgive them for the rest of my life because of that thing?
Yeah, that's really good. These stupid little hurts, and you hold on. We've been saying this, but when you hold on to that hurt, it will only end up hurting you.
Right. So this is a big one. Stop looking for occasions to be offended. Oh. It seems so obvious. It seems so stinking obvious. But man, do people look for reasons to be offended?
I think that's the tagline of Twitter.
Almost all social media.
Yeah.
You're like,
find reasons to be offended and then tell the whole world about it.
Yeah, and it seems like definitely seems to me. It seems like it's gotten worse through social media because it's more of a global offense. I can be offended about absolutely everything,
and it's easy. In 1 second you can be complaining about something, and the next second you can be, I don't know, sharing your breakfast. I mean, it's just easy to put your feelings and emotions out there, and there is somebody else in the world that is going to see your comment and agree with it, disagree with it, and it blows up.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of relationships and a lot of people they're almost prepared for a fight. So they're like, who's going to offend me today? I'm ready to go.
Right.
And they're loaded and ready to explode. And they're just looking for that reason to get offended. And that's not fair to the people in your life. It's not fair to your relationships. It's not fair to you.
Alternatively, I would suggest when you walk into your home, when you walk into friendships, when you walk into your workplace, assume the best about the people around you. Assume the best about who they are. Assume the best about their intentions, because we love to assign intent to why somebody did things. When someone did something to hurt me or offend me, we will be very quick to assign what we believe their intentions were around that situation. But if you can assume the best about their intentions and assume the best about who they are and assume the best about how they feel of you, it will radically change the way you view those relationships and how you're able to handle things whenever things don't go your way or offenses come up. But if you're looking for ways to be offended, you'll find it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've heard this so many times. Like, there's always a fight at Thanksgiving. Like, the family gets together and there's always some sort of fight, and people like prepare for it, and they know that it's coming. And man, to me, like, go to Thanksgiving somewhere else. Like, if that's the mentality, if you're dreading or looking forward to this confrontation that's going to happen with your family, man, make a change. Like, that's just not a good way to live, or at work, or whatever the case may be. You know, I'm not going to get on this conference call. I know that there's going to be something that so-and-so is going to say, and I'm going to get ticked off at it. Like, okay, so you're looking for something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, assume the best about people in your situations.
Absolutely. So don't live in the past. Be present. Again, we talked about this. We hit it on this earlier, but that's a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you're constantly dredging up the past, man, it's going to be tough to move on. And again, we're talking about you personally forgiving somebody so that it's healthy for you. You know, you just have to get to the point where, like, I'm moving on. I'm moving on. I'm not doing that anymore. Yep. This is great. We only have two more. Refrain from judgment. You need to observe, not judge. So have this mentality where you can kind of step outside of the situation, because typically when we're offended, we're in judgment mode. Or,
sure.
You know, and when we need to forgive somebody, there's something that happens, and we have our own things that we bring into that offense, and we're judging, you know.
Sure.
But when we step outside the situation and we can observe the situation, we can look at it from all different sizes. There's empathy that gets put into this. What is their situation? What does their side look like? That can actually help us to forgive as well.
And I think that can happen a lot in the workplace because you can see situations going on around you that you're not even involved in, but you see them happening and you can just choose to judge that whole situation and even choose offense in that situation when you're not even a part of it.
Right.
Rather, if you are observing a situation and actually maybe you have an issue with something and you might even have a point to something that you're concerned about, then go to the person. Go to your boss, go to the person in that situation. You can talk one-on-one about a situation. That's why you're employed there, to help solve problems and make situations better. But if on the sidelines and you instead choose judgment, most likely you're also going to choose to tell somebody else about that.
Sure.
And then the whole situation is going to blow up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the last one, this is, I think this is one of those things that this encompasses everything else.
Okay.
It's send love. And you had kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing love into the situation, it becomes hard to stay offended.
Right.
There's a book that I love. It's called The Greatest Secret in the World, and it's by an author named O.G. Mendino. I think I pronounced that right. But it goes through and he has like these scrolls that it's kind of a fiction thing, but he has these scrolls that you're supposed to read every day for 30 days, and then you move to the next one. So you're kind of internalizing these little lessons.
Sure.
And the first line of the first lesson is, "I will greet this day with love in my heart." And so if you wake up every day and say, "I'm going to love the people around me," it's really hard to be in unforgiveness if that is a decision you make. Because love, we think of love as an emotion, and it's actually an action.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
it's a choice.
Speaking of the Super Bowl, there was a great ad. Did you catch that one where it talked about the Greek words for love?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, and
I was also watching Two Children. So I
you were
didn't
watching
see
Two
all
Children.
everything.
You were worried about your bets and
Was that
stuff. Yeah.
I heard a lot of people talking about the Google ad. Was that the Google ad?
I don't know if it was
So
Google.
I saw a ton of people saying they were crying over the Google ad, but I don't know what it was.
The Google ad.
Okay.
But it
Tell
it
me
talks
about the different words of love.
It talks about the different types of love. And it talks about love, the emotion, love like for a brother, love for a friend and brother, and then there's the agape love. There's the Greek word agape,
Right.
which is again, we're both Christians.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about agape, as God's love for us, but it's this word of action. It's not just an emotion.
That's good.
And so serving people is love.
Yep.
Forgiving people is love. Walking into every single situation, thinking the best of people
Assuming the best, yeah.
is love.
Speaking kindness. It really is an all-encompassing point to everything we've talked about. And I observing, not judging, right? I think all those things, if the idea of showing love to your coworkers, if that seems odd to you, just phrase it out into those different pieces. Can you choose kindness today? Can you choose to assume the best about them? Can you choose that I'm not going to be judgmental about this situation? If you can do all of those things, you are bringing love into that situation. Yeah,
and on top of it, and this is how we'll close, is loving yourself means learning how to forgive.
That is so good.
Because
Tweet that.
Somebody. That is good stuff right there.
At Joe Altieri.
But that is the truth, though. I mean, if you really want to learn how to love yourself, you have to let go of the offenses, because they will
100%.
They will ruin your life.
Yep.
If you have somebody, I really urge you today, if you have somebody that is just, as you're thinking about this, you're like, man, I have not let that thing go. I have a spouse. I have a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a coworker, whoever it is, an old friend that, we were best friends, and now we can't even look at each other because of this thing that we might not even remember the whole circumstance, but all I know is that I can't forgive them. Love yourself enough to forgive them.
That's really good.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, is that good?
That's great.
Awesome. Well, we love you guys. Love you. See, this is part of our love for you, is doing this podcast every week. So we love you. We hope that you guys will share this. We hope that you will live an extraordinary life by loving yourself and forgiving those people around you. Until next week, have a great one.